My name is Katrina Meni, and I'm the Sigma Alliance lead at Aimpoint Digital.
And I'm William Mirono. I am a senior decision scientist here at Aimpoint Digital.
Aimpoint is a leader in analytics, data engineering, operations research, and AI. We help organizations of all sizes, from Fortune 100 companies to startups, to unlock business value through data. Our services range across the entire data and analytics lifecycle. We partner with you to create value in each phase, from ideation through implementation and enablement. Our team includes Sigma experts who've built everything from traditional reports to embedded portals and data applications. In this video, Will is going to demo one of our example data applications while I pretend to be a prospective facilities manager.
Hi, Katrina. Thanks for taking the time to look at our new app. We know that managing your facilities and scheduling repairs can be chaotic and time consuming, especially when you have to juggle through multiple requests and technicians at once. This is why we've built a solution using Sigma, which is designed to make your facilities management processes more efficient and streamlined. And so, without further ado, let's dive right in and walk through how it works.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to seeing how this can help with the multiple requests and logistics we're managing every day. Just this morning, I got a complaint from one of my technicians who said that his schedule didn't have enough travel time between requests. I'm excited to see how this app can make my life and my technicians' lives easier.
Awesome. So, first things first, let's start by looking at one of your client's profile. First, on the table on the right here, shows a previous appointment that Hannah, in this case, has submitted and that has been done by our services. This table basically helps residents keep track of their previous requests. Furthermore, as an existing client, Hannah can also submit new requests. Here, we can see that her information is already populated in the app. So there's no need for her to actually manually enter her details again unless we want to update anything. Now, let's say Hannah needs to report a leak on the fifth floor of her apartment building. She can select the skills needed and then adds a service description. In this case, let's assume that her faucet is leaking in her apartment, right? In the future, she might not even need to select the skills since we're working on a feature that uses AI to predict what type of technician is needed based on the description. Now, let's also choose a time for the service request. We'll pretend we're scheduling this for Wednesday at 11 a.m.
Oh, this is perfect. I love being able to specify an appointment time. Whenever I call the plumber, I always struggle with having to reschedule my work day or my work life so that I am available in that 6 to 8 hour window of time that they give me.
Yes, exactly. So once all the information is there, Hannah would submit it and the system automatically writes it back to a table with all of the service requests that have been received. So now if we move over to the facilities manager view, we can see how you would go about assigning all of the requests you've received to your team of technicians. Obviously, you're not just going to schedule Hannah's request individually, since you need broader context around which team members have the required skills and how to optimize their routes and schedule across the many service requests you've received. Here, you're able to select the day you want to create a schedule for. What day do you want to do, Katrina?
Let's do Wednesday, February 26th, as that was the date we picked for Hannah.
Awesome. Now, when we select this day, you can see the full list of services requests you've received across all your different clients. And it looks like you have a total of 7 requests for this day. And instead of having to manually assign these requests to your team, you can just press this optimize button and the optimization process will automatically begin behind the scenes. It will definitely take a minute or two, but when it's done, it'll send you an email with a link that takes you back to this dashboard thanks to Sigma's email API.
This is so cool. What does the optimization take into account?
In this case, it matches the requests to technicians based on their skill sets, and it also considers things like distance, appointment time, and appointment length. And what's great is that you can decide what's most important to you, and it'll implement that behind the scenes without you needing to write any complicated code whatsoever.
So I could say that I want to limit the number of technicians who are scheduled for a given day. It doesn't make sense to call in a technician to come in to just work for one request and then go home. So I'd like to book each technician with as many appointments as possible on the days they're working, such that I can minimize the overall distance traveled to complete all of the appointments.
Yes, exactly. The system looks at all the requests and finds the best way to assign them to technicians while making sure everything runs efficiently. It groups jobs in a way that reduces unnecessary travel and ensures that technicians aren't bouncing back and forth between distant locations. So once the optimization is complete, you'll be notified an email notification. It gives you a link back to the dashboard where you can refresh the page and update the view once it's finished loading. Now, as you can see in this bottom table, the results appear for February 26th routes. And it assigns the request to each technician and puts together a planned schedule and route. You can see that here we have Frank Holmes, who has a four-tiered journey, starting it from the depot to Samuel Green to another of Samuel Green's request, and so on and so forth. The system calculates how long technicians will be at each location and ensures that there are no overlapping appointments or travel inefficiencies. Now, let's take a look at what this looks like from a technician's perspective. Here's what one of your technicians would see. Right? They're assigned to go from the depot to Samuel Green and then to another of Samuel Green's appointments to Hannah Davis's appointment and then back to the depot.
So the technician has all the info they need, including locations and who they're visiting?
Exactly. And when they get to each appointment, they can lock their start time. For instance, let's say the technician arrives at Samuel Green's apartment at 8:03 instead of 9 a.m. They'll lock that time in this button right here, and the system will automatically update that on the back end. Once the technician finishes the appointment, they can also log whether the issue was resolved through this button right here. If they need to schedule a follow-up or if there were any other issues, for example, maybe Samuel Green wasn't home or there was a different issue that prevented the technician from completing the task, they can always add additional details right here.
Perfect. And would I then be able to track this information?
Yes, when the technician logs that information, it is sent back to you, the manager, for review and approval. You can see exactly when they were scheduled to arrive, when they actually arrived, and how long they spent at the appointment. You can simply go to this approve timesheets stamp and you can approve the appointments which could be tied to payroll and timesheets. And in order to do that, you can simply click on the edit data button and you can click the checkbox as required.
So this means we could use this to improve future scheduling then too, right? Since we can track how long each type of service is actually taking, then we can use that to improve our scheduling.
Exactly. The more data we collect, the more accurate the system can become in predicting future appointments, especially with the AI portion that we are currently building in development. And then, of course, Hannah, the client, is able to see the status of the requests as well. So everything is tied seamlessly together, and any updates that you, Hannah, or your technicians make are automatically reflected in everyone else's views.
This is awesome and exactly what I wanted. So, how does it actually work?
Great question. So let me walk you through the back end so you can see how Sigma is actually making this possible. The service request data is stored in a central input table. When Hannah submitted a new request, a line was added to this table in the underlying data warehouse. When the manager hits the optimize button, Sigma sends the request out via a webhook. A webhook is basically an automated event-driven HTTP callback. Think of it as Sigma saying, "Hey warehouse, I just received a signal from a button click. Do something with it." When a specified event occurs in Sigma, the webhook sends a pre-configured payload of data to an external URL in real time. The webhook then triggers the optimization model, which is powered by Groby, to run. This is where the magic happens. Groby's optimization engine analyzes millions and millions of possible solutions and finds the most efficient one, considering things like technician availability, skill requirements, and travel time. Using this webhook feature allows us to consider the entire dataset at once, rather than optimizing row by row. For example, we don't want a technician double booked at two locations at the same time. The system looks at all the appointments holistically and ensures that everything fits together efficiently. And yet, the great part about this is that you don't need to be an expert in optimization or data science. The app provides a simple, intuitive UI, and all the complex stuff happens in the background. You get the benefits of advanced algorithms without needing any technical expertise.
So, in this workbook, there are a couple different starting points depending on what perspective you're coming from. Let's take a look at what the data has. So, first, we've got a table with all of our clients listed in here. You can see that we've got some basic contact information and location. We've also included the latitude and longitude. This is how the optimizer is going to think about scheduling and the distance and the time that it takes to travel between those distances. In the next iteration, I'd love to add an option that includes an API to pull the latitude and longitude and let folks sign up for new accounts in here. There's also the service request list. This is kind of the main driver that we saw in the demo. Each client is able to come in based on their information and who's populated in here and add a line to this input table. So let's take a look at that option to understand how this works. So I'm going to go back to the client view, and again, we're logged in as Hannah Davis. This is just a hard-coded option for the sake of the demo, but in reality, this would be something that we would handle through embedding or a row-level security option. So let's click on the request to service. We can see that when we click on this, our information or Hannah's information is populated in here. And I did this through an action because I assumed that most people don't want to keep typing in the same information. I don't know about you, but I like to use easy buttons in my life, and anything that can help me streamline my work will make me just happier in general. So these ones are set up in a really simple way in the sense that when I click on this button, I'm going to update a control on the back end that basically just says, "Who are you?" This is, again, something that we could handle in a few different ways depending on how the structure or how the data security is set up. So again, in an embed or a single instance, or the only time when if only one person can be signed in, we wouldn't necessarily need to have this updated control. We could just pull in that value. But for now, we just went with a control. Same thing for the phone number. These formulas are just going to populate whatever Hannah's information is based on the table that we saw earlier. Same for service address. And then we're just going to open the modal. So let's take a look at the request to service modal. All right, so in here, we saw this in the demo, but you can see that the information is populated in here. And then we do have a select a skill option. So when someone clicks submit, we're basically going to pull all of this information into that input table. So very simple insert row action where we're just pulling in the identified fields that we've already talked about, the contact information, and then we're going to look up the latitude and longitude based on who's signed in, so that we can pull in that information. Because I don't know about you, but I definitely don't know my latitude and longitude of where I work or where I live. I think that's pretty unrealistic. We also have this option in here, which is going to pull in the actual duration. This is what we estimate the appointment to take based on the skills that's required. In the V2, would love to see that this field is connected to the past data sources or the past appointment records so that we can continue to make a more accurate assumption. Maybe in the future we could also use AI to take a guess at these numbers instead. But for now, it's all hard-coded. One other cool thing in here is the request ID. This is something where we're just going to look at the max number of the request ID log. So that's, again, the 1, 2, 3, 4, just a unique identifier. Then we're going to add the number 1 so that we have the next iteration of it. This is a simple way to make sure that our records are going to stay unique, that we're inserting into this table, but also not have to manually ask the end user or try and figure out something different. In addition to inserting the row, we're going to clear the controls to make it easy for the next person to come in. Also just keeps it nice and clean. And then lastly, just closing the modal, since once you submit it, you're probably done. So let's take a look at the manager view and let's talk about how they would interact with those requests. So in the demo, we looked at the optimize button primarily. There is one input that we do need to set, which is the appointment day. This example is set up to do a day-by-day basis because everything might be changing. Someone might want to submit an appointment tomorrow, or just they're submitting it late at night and they want it to be tomorrow. And maybe we can meet that appointment need. But most of the time we're going to be looking just kind of one day in advance. We can definitely do a longer period. That would be something that we could do in a second iteration. But again, for this one, we kept it to just be one day at a time. So what's happening when we click this button? Let's take a look at the actions. First, we're inserting a row into a user run log. This helps us on the back end just keep track of the number of times that this item has been, or this request has been run, which day we're running, so that we can always make sure that we're pulling the most recent iteration of something. It's totally possible that someone might come in here and optimize for the same day multiple times. Maybe again, they were on the phone with someone and they know that a new request was submitted and we need to re-optimize for it. So this helps us identify what is the most recent or the max number of that row based on the appointment day. Next is one of the coolest things about this demo, in my opinion, which is the export via webhook. This lets us download data and send it via webhook to something else outside of Sigma. What's super cool about a webhook is that we can send information as an entire package or a larger context. So if you think about this example, we can use pass-through functions to calculate things at a row-by-row level, but when we're looking at optimizing, we need to not only understand what is this specific row's entry, what time, for example, what time does this person want this appointment? Is it 9 a.m. or 10 a.m.? But we also need to look at what the next appointment would be or the following appointment so that we can optimize a 9 a.m., a 10 a.m., and an 11 a.m. request to make sure that there's time for all those sorts of things. So what's happening is that the data is being sent as a group of things, and then Databricks is then passing that information to an optimizer software called Gurobi, which looks at all of the different possibilities of what we could do for a schedule. And in Gurobi, we can specifically call out certain things that are important to us. So for example, we could say that it's more important for the technicians to be closer to the desired time frame versus having to travel the least amount of distance. We could also say that we want to optimize for the lowest number of employees to be activated per day, or we could say that we don't really care and we prefer to have or we prefer to have lower travel times. So there's a lot of different options that we can consider in those optimizations. After we send the data out, we're going to populate something that is the run ID. This lets us, again, kind of keep a log of what's going on, and we can also make sure that we're increasing that number by 1 so we can know what the next run would be. And then next, we're going to open this modal to let the end user know that the optimization has started. So this is a really simple pop-up, basically just saying, hey, we got it. We'll take a second to calculate it, and we'll get back to you when it's done. After the optimization has run, the manager can come down here and see the schedule. Now, in order for us to create these schedules, we had to take individual lines and group them back up into a single line. And what I mean by that is we had to be able to say that Frank, for example, was going from the depot to Samuel Green's house, and then Samuel Green, to a different spot than Samuel Green has, and Samuel Green to Hannah Davis then. So this is going to be something where we can maximize Sigma's ability to do multiple levels of groupings in a single table and display it in a way that's meaningful to our end users. So instead of a table just displaying here's where we are, and then the row below it is going to be here's where the next row is, we can group them and put them into a row that makes sense to our end users. The next persona that we talked about was the employee view. So this is a similar view that we saw on the last one, where they get to decide what day they're looking at and then what their schedule looks like for a specific day. But on this one, we also have these options to log an appointment start and add appointment notes. So these are just columns added to this table, and we're using a blank space to make it appear like it's an additional option or that we don't need a column name in there. So let's take a look at these actions. So first, when they click on the log appointment, we're going to tell Sigma what job ID it is. Let's take a look at how those actions work. The first thing that we're going to do is when a user clicks on any column, because we want this to apply in all scenarios, is they're going to set the job ID. This basically just tells us what are we talking about here, which item, which appointment are we talking about here. Next, when they click on the log appointment start time, we're going to populate a value, or we're going to populate a control value with the current time, which is just the formula now. We're also going to open up another modal, which basically says, hey, thanks for logging, your appointment has started. Then when they click the log appointment notes, we'll open up the modal for the employee notes. So let's take a look at that one. This one you can see has some dynamic text in here that's basically just pulling in what job ID we just clicked on or we just set with the previous action. This is going to pull in the appointment information and any job details that are associated with it. The appointment results in here is just a simple segmented control with the manual entries of resolve, new appointment, and other. And then we just have a large open text field so that the technicians can give any additional details they'd like. Last, we've got log and send for approval. This is going to do a really similar action to the other things that we saw earlier, where it's just going to insert a row based on all the populated fields into a table called the job notes approval. As a reminder, that was on the manager field in this approved timesheets, and this just opens up a modal. See here, it's opening the manager approval modal. So let's take a look at that one. This is probably the simplest view that we have in this application. It's just the input table itself. This is where those rows that we were looking at just before are being inserted into, with the information of the employee, the description of the service, the arrival time, logged at, when it was supposed to start, when it was logged as ended, and then the scheduled appointment length, and then the actual appointment length. So here we're doing a simple minute difference or date difference between these sorts of things. And so you can see that in our testing, we had some wide ranges of these fields. Lastly, the manager would just come in here and check these boxes to approve or not approve. In a future iteration, would love to add more detail to this and maybe set up something that multiple managers could come in and approve different values. For now, this is the end of our data lineage, or where our data stops in this iteration. As a quick summary, our data lineage starts when someone requests a new service, it's inserted into a new table, and then when the manager clicks the Optimize button, a webhook sends that data out to Databricks and Gurobi to be optimized, and then Gurobi and Databricks send it back to Sigma by accessing the table that one writes to. And then Gurobi and Databricks send the data back to Sigma so that we can see it in the interface and interact with it. For example, we can see the outputs in the manager view as well as the employee view. And then once the employee would be starting that appointment, we can add on additional information. In addition to making one circle from the person requesting the appointment to the manager to the optimizer, we also have this additional circle of the optimizer to the manager to the employee and then back to the manager, with again the option to have that also extend to the original requester. There's a lot of cool features in this application, but I'm also excited about the possibilities that are coming with data applications and the next features and iterations that Sigma is releasing. I love how it'll make everything streamlined for the team and take the guesswork out of scheduling. I'm curious though, what other improvements are you thinking about making to this app?
Well, earlier I mentioned that we would love to integrate AI so the client doesn't have to choose which technician skill is needed for their request, since they may actually not know what they actually need. Furthermore, we are adding a feature that allows manager to manually assign technicians to service appointments. This provides greater flexibility for managers to do their assignments. Finally, we're also working on adding a way to create new employees and customers in the system, update the skill sets of employees, as well as a way to integrate any PTO requests.
Oh, I'm excited for those updates. And seeing this live in action, I actually know some other people who'll be interested in an app like this. I was just chatting with one of my friends who manages a hotel and has to schedule shifts for his teams manually. He would love to be able to get an optimized schedule based on everyone's holiday schedules and preferences.
Yes, we also see opportunities for data apps like this to help schedule deliveries, nursing shifts at hospitals, cruise shifts in the airline industry, and more. And let your friend know that Aimpoint Digital is more than happy to discuss how we can help build out a scheduling app that meets their needs.